Welcome back, or welcome if it's your first time to Story Talk. I'm Zeal or Scott. Let me hide that window. I don't need y'all looking at that stuff yet. My bad. My pronouns are he, him, and we have a special episode tonight. It is our first time doing Story Talk one-on-one, where we sit down with one creator and really dig into the creative process and the creation that they're coming out with. You can follow us everywhere at ZealZaddy or ZealZaddy RPG on TikTok, because somebody has my name and is not giving it up easily. You can check out our D&D and now Cypher SYstem supplements on DriveThruRPG. Maybe we'll do something for this one tonight. It's in my head. You can use the clip command, which is !clip, if you want to get a little clip saved, the last 30 seconds or 40 seconds or whatever it is. There's often funny moments or interesting moments or things you want to see. Clip it. You can come back to it later, and I'll probably use some of them in a future show. We are a partner with Only Crits Dice. You can save 12% on their amazing dice. I have beautiful dice that I've gotten from them, and every now and then I do a giveaway. I'm not near one yet, but in a couple of months I'm going to do another giveaway. I'll drop the link in chat in a bit. For YouTube viewers, please like, subscribe, and I hope to get some comments. I answer every question in the comments that I get. If you have a question, just drop in with the word question so it's easy for me to spot. I'm doing this without someone on the back end handling that for me, so I'll take care of that. Luckily tonight, I don't think there are any trigger warnings or anything that I have to, there is corporate horror. Is that a trigger warning? I don't know.
There is horror, and I would say that I guess there's a slim chance we talk about some of the details of the game, which can include some body horror, can include some existential horror. It's a sort of horror comedy game broadly, so we might touch on some stuff. But I'll try to make sure that I bring up if we're gonna get into a risky zone.
Yep. And that okay. So tonight's an interview with Caleb Zane Huett, who just spoke for the first time on the show. Thank you. He's the lead designer of the successfully kickstarted The Triangle Agency, which is paranormal investigation and corporate horror. Now, please control yourselves and let's stabilize reality so we can determine whether Caleb is an anomaly needing apprehension. We will have to make that determination in the next hour. Maybe we'll know, maybe we won't. It may require further investigation. Hello, Caleb.
Hello. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Why don't you walk through who you are and where everyone can find you? I will start dropping links in so that it becomes easy to find where you are.
Awesome. My name is Caleb Zane Huett. I am the lead designer of Triangle Agency and sort of the creative director of Haunted Tables. So I've got my hands in everything all along the process. I am the primary writer and designer of the game, alongside a team of 30 people across our opening salvo of stuff, where we have an incredible team of artists. My closest collaborator and co-designer is Sean Ireland, and the art director on the game is Ryan Kingdom. So you're going to see me probably reference their work a lot over the course of today if we talk about the project. And there's a ton of places to find me currently getting posted in the chat that you're welcome to go to. Probably the places I'm most active are still Twitter, and on our Kickstarter page, I'm updating monthly with more specific details. And the easiest way to talk to me is definitely the Haunted Table Discord, which you can get to from discord.hauntedtable.games.
Awesome. That's amazing. And the way it works, I have a zillion questions. If you have a question you want to ask, just drop it in chat. I'll get started. I know it takes a few minutes sometimes for people to get their ideas going. So I'm going to start with a simple question that even reading the rules, I don't have a complete understanding of.
Okay.
So it's the easiest one probably you'll get all night. Do you see Triangle Agency as a game for short form or long form storytelling?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little bit on our campaign page, and it's developed a little bit over the course of our creation of the game. But I like to say it's for mid-length campaigns. So when you think about a game that like is intended to last forever and like let you come back every week and keep your adventure going for as long as you have things to do with it. This game isn't really designed for that, but it's also designed for a little more investment and a little more time than a one shot or two shot. The game itself is built in like has like 30 discrete chunks for your character to level up in. You're picking between three paths, and you can level up, quote unquote, your character 30 times before they hit the end of their career at the Triangle Agency. So what that means in practice is after every mission, you can decide how many of those levels, how much of that time that character spends, and that can be the lever that your group decides how long your campaign is going to go for. So you can decide that everybody's going to do a big boost after every mission and get 3 times spent every mission, which means that your whole career of a single agent is going to be 10 sessions, or you could do one at a time and spread it out to be 30 if you really want to like make sure that you're able to stay in the world for a long time. We expect people to be somewhere in the middle of that, split the difference around 15 missions, which could be 15 sessions or could be more or less depending on how you play.
Right. So do you see a mission lasting a single session?
I would love that. I would love that. And I think I always dream that they will. And then I don't think that I've ever run one that wasn't on a stream, that didn't have a strict deadline that actually did that. Most of my personal games have been 2 or 3 sessions per mission because I think part of the fun of Triangle Agency is that your characters have such huge abilities and such huge agency in the world, like ability to manipulate the world, that you can end up veering off on very strange paths or have to deal with a big problem that your characters themselves created. So it can really, unless you're a streamer or trying to make sure you hit a certain amount of time, can really balloon out in some fun ways.
So which came first? The game slash agency name, or the D4s as the center of everything?
The game, this is like, I almost feel embarrassed telling the story when I do, but the game started because I thought of the name and thought it was funny. I made a logo. I posted the logo online and was like, what if you played my paranormal investigation game, Triangle Agency? And enough people thought that that sounded fun that I was like, well, I better make it now.
Right.
So I feel silly saying that, but yes, it was the name first, and then the D4 system came basically with me talking to Sean and making a joke, like kind of following through on a bit, like, oh, what if we played it entirely with the triangle dice? And then sitting down with the math of that over a couple of days, figuring out what I thought was interesting about that and how they could be manipulated in an interesting way, and settling on this system, which I love. So yes, the chicken in this case very clearly before the egg.
Okay. All right. So I want to go over influence because there's so many things I see in there that are interesting and potentially influential from something. So I'm going to go over a bunch of things and you tell me whether you were influenced by it and in what ways.
All right.
So this is going to be a long list.
Lightning round.
And some of these have already been mentioned by you in stuff that you've posted, like X-Files.
Yeah, X-Files, huge. I mean, X-Files, the structure of the game is obviously pulled from the vibe of the X-Files structure of a mission. It is about going to a place, seeing something very weird, deciding how you feel about it, and then choosing whether to let it continue or to try to understand it or capture it. The X-Files structure is that. Almost every time it's about these two people going into a strange place and coming out changed, having decided whether to leave it or to try to stop what they've seen there. And that's what Triangle Agency at its core is every session is about making those choices and deciding as you learn about the world how you fit into it.
Men in Black.
Men in Black definitely connected. I think Men in Black is one of those things that's just deep in my brain because it hit at the right time when I was a kid, so it's definitely in there. A lot of the sillier side of our game, I would say, probably resonates with Men in Black. We definitely have like the creature character piece. You could very easily be the little alien guys that hang out in that movie
Yes.
that work for the company. And that same energy of like this, men in suits coming in, flashing your memory is absolutely a thing that's connected, but it's not one that I think about a lot, but it definitely is in there.
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks is funny. I've seen season 1.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed what I saw, but I ended up falling off of it for one reason or another. my husband Michael, who does a lot of our visual design, like development of what the branding and stuff is going to look like, yeah, loves Twin Peaks and is hugely influenced by it. But I think it's funny that that would be the place you'd be least likely to see a Twin Peaks influence, probably.
Yeah.
I can say I've watched a lot of it lately.
Loki.
Loki, my hot take on Loki is that I don't actually like that show very much, but I think they are pulling from some very similar influences, and I like the vibe of the story they're telling. But I got that hit exactly when I got exhausted with the Disney, like
Yeah.
everything filmed in that same set, that same round set
Yes.
style stuff. So I didn't love it, but I do like a lot of the ideas that they're playing with.
Yeah, I saw the agency method or structure similar to what you'd seen in X-Files. I was like, man, that's very similar to
Yeah, yeah.
Severance.
Severance, yeah, definitely. But what's funny is I actually had written the whole Delta test before I watched Severance because
Oh, interesting.
I knew that it was going to be very clearly connected, so I was nervous to watch it ahead of time. And then finally, after a couple of people had brought it up to me and been like, "Well, of course you've watched this," I was like, "Fine, I'll finally watch it." I sat down and I'm obsessed with it. I think that I'm sure that the way I've thought about it has colored the final draft of the game and colored some of the writing that I've done. But
Yeah.
the Delta test was written, I believe, entirely before I watched it at all.
Amazing. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Have you? It's
That
a movie by Michel Gondry. If you haven't heard of it.
Yeah, that I don't even know that I've seen that movie actually.
He did another one called The Science of Sleep. Very similar. They have these overarchingly evil corporations doing these terrible things to people, mankind. Anomalies run rampant. You really should see them, I think.
Yeah, I will. I'll check them out. I definitely have heard a lot of stuff about them, but I think I might have seen Eternal Sunshine, but it would have been more than a decade ago, and I don't remember.
Yeah.
Brazil. I've seen that one time and loved it. Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was raised um on Monty Python, and so there was like a very direct line for me of like having to see Brazil at when I reached an age where I could understand it at all. Um, love it, love it, love it. I'm sure that's another one that's like I wouldn't have thought of until you said it, but I'm sure it's deep in there somewhere.
Dispatches from Elsewhere. Have you seen that? It was a
I
recent
haven't.
show by Jason Segel, and there's something very intriguing about it being this secret organization sending secret messages and requirements of the participants. They're not really a company. Definitely, I think you'd get some things from there that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
So
I'll check it out.
here's one that I think is interesting because it is now a game from a podcast that was recently kickstarted by Monty Cook Games, the Magnus Archives.
I have listened to about 10 episodes of that show and really liked it. I have not played the game yet. I am very curious. And I will admit, I had a moment of fear because we were preparing our campaign when they announced it, and I was like, I'm sure this is going to touch some of the same stuff. So I was very nervous about that element of like, oh no, this big brand that everybody loves is doing something in a similar vein. But obviously that ended up not being an issue at all. And I know that a lot of our Triangle Agency fans are also huge Magnus Archives fans, and so there's a lot of really fun overlap there. And I'm glad that we have both games now.
I'm in that group. I back both of your Kickstarters.
Yeah, I loved the episodes I saw.
This is going to be a weird year for games for me. I'm going to run all these really odd games that have really weird, like, there'll be no fantasy, I don't think. Oh, no, there's one fantasy game. And I'm even kind of disappointed I have that in there.
You got to have a little. You got to keep a little bit.
Yeah, I'll run Shadow Dark. It'll be short. Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot, I haven't seen it at all. Maybe I saw the first few minutes of the trailer, but I mean, I have a crush on that lead actor, so I want to watch it.
All right. I mean, I have a lot more. I'm not going to go over all of them because I don't want to run into that. But I think there's some really cool things. I'll actually drop the list in chat if it sparks any questions for anybody. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But
Sounds like a great reading list for lots of people. Yeah.
It may not drop at all. No, I won't. It's too long. I'll drop it in at the end or something. All right. So, can you explain resonance to those who don't know the game?
Oh, resonance is in like the character type? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what makes them different from a mundane human?
Yeah. So in Triangle Agency, you are playing as something called a resonant, as in like someone who resonates with something in particular. And it means you have bonded with an anomaly, which is a force that has come into our reality from outside of it. Resonants are still primarily their identity. They are the person they were when they were a human. And the anomaly is, in a sense, kind of hiding within them, which allows you, as the player, to use these like reality warping powers. And it also means that you are required to work for the Triangle Agency, which finds any resonance it can and hires them to become field agents or employees in the corporate structure that it uses to capture more anomalies.
All right.
So,
So
in the simplest sense, you're a person with cool powers.
if distortions of reality are created by accumulations of thoughts or particularly powerful single thoughts, could I have just created the Oval Corp, an organization operating to opt out of all things triangular?
You mean by thinking about it just now?
Yes.
Well, I think that it would probably be hard to believe that you have a very strong emotional attachment to the Oval Corp based on that pitch. But I think, yes,
True.
there's the anomalies often do not take on structures when they first appear. For the most part, we would think of them more like monsters or like magical effects that kind of move around. Um, Sometimes they inhabit objects, and sometimes they have really close relationships to people. But I would say it would be more likely that an Oval Corp that already exists in our world learns about anomalies and tries to become a competitor to the Triangle Agency, is what
Yeah.
I would pitch.
Yeah. I thought about it earlier and I was like, oh, I may have just made the big villain for my campaign.
You can. Yes, we have an entire type of mission that's called market disruption in the full game that we touch on briefly, and that is about that specifically. It is about how do field agents sometimes get sent out to deal with organizations or regular humans who start to disrupt the agency's business.
Oh, cool. So that seems like um, you're giving us information about future things that we don't even know about yet. That's
Well,
awesome.
Our Kickstarter backers are playing the unstable edition right now, which is
Yeah.
the like text complete version of the game. So that's mostly what I'm referencing here.
So you license music from Edith Margaret Mudge.
Yes, yeah.
Tell us about the process and how you found her and how GMs and agents can use the music.
Oh yeah. So Edith is a friend of Sean's from way back. Sean is my co-designer I mentioned earlier, who does a lot of composing for television and film. And so it was a question from Sean directly to Edith, sort of a favor, but we paid for the commission and went back and forth on a few drafts of the song. My original request for the song, my sort of pitch for it was like, can you do the corporate, like a corporate Muzak style
Right.
jingle, and
Stock
then
music.
show it, yeah, and then somehow show us it like falling apart, like something else is trying to fight within the song to sort of like co-opt it or take it over. And I think that's really visible in the final product. We did a lot
Totally.
of really fun back and forth. The song is available for streamers and YouTubers and stuff to use however you would like alongside Triangle Agency content. We have it on Spotify as well if you look up Edith Margaret Mudge or look
I
up
have.
Triangle Agency. And yeah, we got it specifically for that purpose. So if anybody ever wants to use it and you need the file, you can just send us a message.
Yeah, I listened to all of her music that was on there the last couple days just to kind of get my head in the right space
Edith
for
is
it.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all very interesting, very cool stuff. I could see her doing like a commission for maybe, if she's listening, my Invisible Sun game coming up in a few months. um, so, what? Actually, we got a question before that question. Is there anything different about a session zero for Triangle Agency?
That's a great question. Yes, I would say that there's a couple things that are different. The biggest one is that you're not just making your character, you're ultimately going to be making several. You are all making your own agent, and then you are making those agents relationships, and those relationships are played not just by the GM, but by other people at the table. So by the end of a session, let's say there's three players, By the end of that session, you'll have 3 characters. You'll have your agent, and then you'll have the relationship of the other player, and the relationship of the player to your right and the player to your left. You'll be playing 3 sometimes completely different people. I think it's most fun if it's that way.
Yeah.
And by the end of that first session, you have a cast of uh, the whole set of people basically times 4 because they all have 3 starting relationships. And over the course of the game, you end up with even more than that if you have anybody invest in reality. And then the other things I would say that I don't know if it's different, but that I think is extra important with Triangle Agency is talking about um, how your group handles horror, talking about how your group, what kind of story your group is comfortable with. Triangle Agency is like at its heart a game about being in a little bit of a bad situation and having to like over time watch your characters figure out how to deal with it. And um I think being ready for that is a good thing to talk about at the beginning and being ready for
Yeah.
what kind of stories your group is comfortable telling. They're not going to be traditional power fantasies and they're not going to be traditional like adventures. We all get to be heroes all the time. There's a game full of hard choices, and I think making sure that you're discussing with your friends uh, how to make those hard choices is important specifically for our
Yeah.
game.
Interestingly, hard choices without the threat necessarily of death, because you can be reincarnated until, of
Yeah.
course, it's not worth it for them to reincarnate you anymore.
Yes, yeah. It was very important to me and to all of us that the threat of the game felt very emotionally true. And I think I don't know if this is true for every table. I find that um character death as a tool for an RPG is often kind of in the way of it's such a major threat that it gets in the way of using it as an actual storytelling technique. A lot I know tons of D&D campaigns and I've been in millions of them where like it's completely off the table that your character dies, and that is the game's like built-in designed like lever for like things going the worst that they can go. And
Yeah.
so we wanted to make sure that like we were building for tables that were like the ones I'd seen where character death is pretty frowned upon. It's pretty uncommon. We wanted to lean into the idea that your character can continue to live, but that the choices you're making are going to be like even tougher than you're making in uh,
Yeah.
typical adventure games.
Yeah, I found it very interesting. The only other game that I'd seen where death was basically off the table was Tales from the Loop, where you play kids that are under 16, so 11 to 16 years old. And I
Mhm.
think to eliminate that threat to say this is not that kind of a game, they did that. But they did it in a very direct way. Death's just off the table.
Yeah.
Don't kill the characters. Yours was very different in that it danced around the issue of death in a way that made it playful, in that you may choose to die rather than deal with the social repercussions of being brought back, which I found
You could.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
There's a lot of really interesting stuff that I've already heard people do using the way that our system handles death, which to be totally 100% clear about, the agency revives you at any time you would die. And unless you have gone so far against the agency that it's not worth it for them to do that. But they revive you every time you would die, meaning that death in the field is kind of an expected part of the process and more of an inconvenience than a major disruptive event for your campaign.
What celebrity would you want to play or run Triangle Agency for? I have mine
Oh
in the head
gosh.
already. I know who I want to run it for or play it with.
Oh my gosh. A celebrity?
Yeah.
Any celebrity at all?
Yeah, someone who you think would just love it and you would love being in it with them.
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I guess right now because of Severance, like Ben Stiller would be a very fun person to
That
have
would
at
be
the
cool,
table,
yes.
and would be hilarious to have.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, if I could somehow trick Sam Lake into playing with me, Finnish
Cool.
man, creator of
Yeah.
there are a lot of Remedy games.
Yeah.
Um, those are some big dreams, I guess.
Yeah. I would love to run it or play in it with Neil Gaiman, because there's
Oh
so
wow,
many
yeah.
interesting connections. Like his storytelling mind and your storytelling mind, I think would mesh really well. Like they would be amazing together.
Well, that's a very flattering thing to say. Who knows?
it. I'm very excited about the game. I think it's a beautifully written, amazing game. All right, I'm gonna.
Oh,
All right,
okay. Sorry, V from our Discord server just brought up Tatsuki Fujimoto, which is the actual correct answer. Creator of Chainsaw Man. That would be honestly that whole table would be so wild. So thank you, V. I'm glad you brought up the right answer to that. You're right.
I'm going to talk a little about your writing. I'm going to give you some examples of your own writing.
Oh gosh.
Not bad, in a good way.
I'm gonna hide.
Which is your favorite snippet of corporate writing and why? And I'm going to give you some examples to make it easy so you don't have to imagine them all.
Okay.
Celebratory interrogation.
Yes. Yeah. The hard part about this is going to be trying to figure out what was me and what was Sean.
Okay.
Especially with the agency stuff. But that is one of my favorite phrases in the book for sure.
Eliminate the grateful party immediately.
That one was me, and I do love that one. Yes.
A complete mission report is a complete self.
That one was also me.
In the event that restructuring an agent is no longer cost effective, the agency will provide your loved ones with a small stipend and a non-disclosure agreement.
I think that one might have been Sean, but it was very good.
That might actually be a real one for some companies.
Yeah.
Unit activity will be celebrated with a pizza party and immediate long-term stay in the vault.
Yes, that one. I think if Portal has any major influence on this game, it's in that sentence.
Yeah. If it generates positive feelings, you may sign and print your name below as a reminder of the important life decision you've just made of your own will.
And that page was the first thing I wrote for the whole game, and so I love that page. But gosh, impossible to choose. I think celebratory interrogation is one of the favorite combinations of words mentioned in the whole book for sure.
And it's so succinct, 2 words.
Yeah, so strong. So I'm gonna say that one so as not to belabor thinking about my own writing for too long, but I do appreciate it, and it was very fun to hear those jokes
Oh my God.
said back at me.
Anybody who loves to laugh while they're reading rules, this is for sure the game for you. There's so much humor strewn through it.
I really appreciate it. That's always my goal with the writing, and we talked a lot early on in the creation of this project that like first, and maybe not first and foremost, but that one of our primary goals that we would not set aside is that the act of reading it needed to be enriching even without play. Like the act of engaging with it needed to be enriching and entertaining, which I think is often true for me when I read rulebooks because I love rulebooks, but I think is often a secondary goal rather than like one of the primary ones. And we wanted that to be like, we wanted it to get to feel really like you were enjoying a book even as you learned.
Yeah. And it worked beautifully. The corporate motif is a lot like Severance, I think. The feel cold and distant, heartless, but obligated to prepare you as minimally as possible rather than as maximally as possible for your work. So you present the corporate experience, the fantasy corporate experience perfectly. Have you spent a lot of time in corporate environs? Like, where have you learned all this?
So I actually have not worked myself in a lot of corporate environments, but I do have a degree in public relations. And a lot of what we learned was about corporate communication and dialogue. And one of the things that I took from my public relations degree was I can never in my life do this job because so much of it was like it's sort of like when you learn that human resources like HR is not really a thing there that's to protect employees. Not really. Yep. It's actually reversed. It's like a branding choice to make it seem like that when actually it is a defense for the corporation
to defend against you.
Yeah, in the same way, the job of a public relations person isn't to make stuff up, isn't to be a liar, but to be manipulative with information that really exists, and to be attempting to prepare for your company doing bad things by knowing how you're going to talk about it when they do, and like knowing how you're going to try to cover it up by distracting around it when you do. And that is a legit job that we train people for, that I am technically very trained for, and that I left the degree very concerned about. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and then I spent several years as a manager of a bookstore, which is a much more pleasant and positive customer service and work environment than a corporate one in many ways, but has that same, no matter what kind of business you're working for, you have that same kind of need to use language in really precise ways, both as like managers and as like outward facing like social media people. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we use words to present ourselves when we are presenting something bigger than us, like a corporation or a store or whatever, and how people use that language in funny ways, and then tried to find all of the jokes we could in there. Sean, on the other hand, I think has spent more time in larger scale corporate environments and startups and stuff like that. So he brought some of the very sincere, like genuine corporate energy to a lot of the stuff in the book. And then my job is silly jokes.
So in the game, there are 9 qualities. What was the deciding factor? I'm sure you started with either a lot more or too few, but you ended up with empathy, duplicity, dynamism, attentiveness, initiative, subtlety, presence, persistence, professionalism. How did you settle on this group? And were any of them ones you were thinking of replacing or eliminating as you went through?
Well, we always knew there would be 9 because we do everything in the game in threes, and we wanted there to be a lot because, well, I mean, to peek behind the curtain a little bit, I guess, in the game design for those qualities, the important thing is that they're a little bit fiddly and a little bit strange to try to work your way around. Like a lot of them overlap in weird ways. They have even using them in the game, like using them in a balanced way, can be a little difficult because the sorts of things the company's asking you to do don't actually necessarily want you to call on that. So most like um, things like empathy or things like professionalism are colored in a very particular way when you're trying to call upon them you doing the things you're doing in this campaign. So characters who end up with a lot of empathy and have to find ways to use it for the purposes that it allows you to use it for means you are having to twist empathy in particular ways. So a lot of them was trying to find fun ways to do that. The one that changed the most in development was what became dynamism, because we were basically trying to find a word that implied violence but didn't say
Right,
that
action
it wasn't a
oriented.
corporation. Yeah, it wasn't a corporation telling you like the
Right.
violent one. So that took a couple different times. We had some joke names, we had some different things, and in an RPG the name is the whole thing. So even though it sounds kind of
Yeah.
silly to be like we tried to find the name, that really also was the whole concept.
Yeah, super important, especially in a game like this where you have a very specific aesthetic.
Yes. Yeah. And so the dynamism was the toughest one, but to be honest, it's like poetry. At a certain point, we liked what they sounded like, we liked how they worked, and so they stuck pretty quick.
All right, so I'm going to give you your personal game development competency self assessment, and you can pick
Okay.
whichever one out of each 2 that you
Sure.
like, that you associate with most.
I'm ready.
A rule is stuck in the game that isn't quite right, and it's driving you crazy. Sean tells you it goes to print tomorrow anyway. You, here's your choices, ask him to push the print deadline so you can enjoy cocktails or revise the rule to at least make it palatable when read while intoxicated. +3 empathy. Say fuck it and let it print. +3 persistence.
Oh gosh. If we're that close to printing, then I've already made a mistake. So it's printing. If we're that close and it's not ready, then then it's done. It's printing.
All right. Your game design style is force the setting to fit the system, +3 professionalism.
Mhm.
Fit the system to the setting while convincing yourself it's the other way around because you're good at math, +3 duplicity.
Definitely the second. And I think the um what I found most exciting in this process has been when I'm able to make the math feel like it's magically supporting the story. Um
It does
and
all over the place, by the way.
yeah, and so like it's always about having an idea of what we want it to feel like, having a place we're trying to get to, and then playing with the math until we find that intersection point. I looked so wild. My journal looked completely ridiculous at the time that I was figuring out the dice system because I was just like writing out every possibility, testing different things. We have this is like a little bit of a like future secret reveal, but the campaign talks about it. We have you can get additional dice in certain ways as you progress. And a lot of the ways that those dice work, I had developed mathematically like a long time ago. And then it wasn't until we got to the actual development of the like unstable edition, this like full game, that I realized that all of the math play I had done was like very boring. Like so like it was interesting math, but it was not interesting choices. And so all of the dice got completely redone to be very flavorful and story forward rather than um to be like fun manipulations of the math of the system. And I love where they ended up, but it meant sacrificing the I'm a math genius side of the process for
Okay.
sure.
All right. And then the last one. A Nemesis game designer dares to say your game concept isn't original.
A
You,
Nemesis.
one, disagree vehemently and argue about each specific complaint, plus three dynamism. Or use social media to discredit them while praising their understanding and authority of role playing games in general, plus three subtlety.
Discredit them. No, I don't know. Uh, well, the problem here is that I wouldn't argue with them. I don't really think that I don't really think that originality in the sense that that can be wielded as a weapon is like necessarily my goal. I'm totally comfortable being somebody who is like a very proud and happy like remixer of vibes and finder of new things within things I like. Um, so I guess the closest of those two is going to be the second one because I would happily tell them that they were brilliant designers. Anybody who is brave enough to do that is probably pretty smart. Um, the so I'll go with the I mean the subtlety, I think is what it was.
It was subtlety,
Um,
yeah. That
yeah.
may have been some bad manager work writing up that one.
I think the thing I'm more likely to fight about and that I have ended up in fights about is like I and I think every game designer deals with this. There's an interesting thing that happens when people uh start using the word should, where like if the word should starts getting thrown at me in any context, I start getting like riled up, like defensive.
Right.
Because my reaction to that is always like it's art. Like I shouldn't anything. Like I get to do
Right.
whatever I want. And like I love feedback and I love hearing people's opinions and stuff that happens. Um, in games and like how people feel about the game. And then as soon as I start hearing should, I'm like, I will set fire to my entire house before I read this any further.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I'm most likely to
I love
get in
that.
fights about. That's the dynamism.
There's a question in chat that I want to get. I think it's an interesting question. When the inevitable expansion or third party content releases that might break the nine of each arc pattern, what are the vibes? Three new options for each category, one option for each of the three categories.
That's very interesting. We do have some plans right now for some stuff that we want to do next year, stuff that you probably won't start seeing until 2025, honestly, because of how the publishing things works. That right now the plan is more on the one of each category vibe. But to be honest, it's very hard to write additional anomalies for this game because we decided that they should all have 21 abilities, 21 unique abilities that are all story prompts, and then and that as much as we can don't overlap and that have very distinct spheres. So writing another 21 skills that don't overlap with our existing like 180 skills or whatever it is like a pretty big challenge, pretty difficult thing to do. But we have ideas for it. We do kind of want to do that. But I think if we start seeing the pattern really break, it'll be that we start adding more realities and more competencies and fewer anomalies.
Right. I love all the threes. Was there anything you were unable to threeify?
Let me think. No, but I did. It does. The game does begin to incorporate seven as an important number in various ways, um, which I think is something that is for people to discover and look for in the full game. But so that was fun to start like being able to pull in this other number and like not have to make every choice about a three, but be able to then jump all the way to seven. But for the most part, no. There are jokes in the book that exist because we forced a three like into a list or
Yeah.
into a situation, and it has always served us very well. In fact, I think one of the things that made the project get done at the speed it got done and with the energy that it had was because one of the biggest things in your way as a creator is the fact that like at every step, at every hurdle, you're having to make another set of choices. You're having to sit down and decide what's the best thing here. And that question of like, what is the best thing here can be like a very time consuming and very exhausting thing to have to think through. So if the answer is always three, if you decide, how can I, well, what is the sentence that is shortest possible answer to this question that has a three in it? It can save you a lot of time. It was a great guiding light.
Yeah, it makes the game easy to understand how it functions too. There's really very few places where it never breaks immersion. I mean, that's what I felt when I was reading. Like, it would be really hard to break immersion with this.
I'm glad to hear that.
Are there shortcuts to impossible places, like inside someone's mind? Could that happen? Like that'd be a being John Malkovich thing. Like,
Oh, like the ability shortcut? Can we?
yeah, are there
Yeah, yeah.
shortcuts to places that you can't reach?
Oh, absolutely. The whole fun of the game for me is, especially from the perspective of being a GM, is when your players take the text of an ability and use it to do something strange. They're all written with that in mind. Some of them are written to be pretty precise, but for the most part, we want skills to be, if you are thinking in that way and if you're approaching the game in that way, to give you these like very interesting like branches to go down. And something that happens in our Discord a lot, right, is people asking about rulings on these abilities. And something I try to make sure that I say is like, at the end of the day, it comes down to rulings. It comes down to your table ruling. But my perspective is the opposite of the books. The book says at the beginning, the full book says you're not allowed to interpret any text in the book, which we all know is impossible. But that especially when you get to the abilities, you should always be looking for ways to use them like that, like the way you're describing. A shortcut should always have the possibility of taking you somewhere strange. One of my favorite ones is that came up the other day. Somebody was asking about the drain abilities. And there's a particular ability called Borrow, which says you can select a mundane target and take a quality of it. And a couple of people have realized over the course of play of this game over the past couple of years that that doesn't necessarily exclude objects. So we've had a lot of people begin to realize like, oh, I can take qualities of buildings. I can take qualities of things lying around in the room and borrow those. And I think like if our system has anything like system mastery to it, which I don't know that it does, it's about finding ways to be creative and finding ways to use abilities in interesting ways like that. And that's 100% intended. And I
Nice.
dream of every time someone shows me something I didn't think of.
What's the most demerits you've ever given or received? And what
Ooh.
led to it, and what was the punishment?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. Um, mostly, most of the games I've played over the last year have been promotional games. I think Keegan from Plus One EXP, who is an incredible player and a super, super fun person to have in any game, they I think were the most directly like willing to get demerits and willing to cause chaos during one of our live games. But there is a character, yes, and that character um, by the end of that journey, to actually avoid getting punishments, figured out a way to like erase themselves from the agency's history, which was really, really cool. A really unique and interesting use of some of the tools they had. So I guess when I would have given the biggest punishment, they disappeared out from under me. But I think the most common stuff, the most common demerits, I think, are from are at least in my experience have been baristas and CEOs. CEOs are not allowed to take orders, and baristas are not allowed to use people's actual names. And that at the table is like a fun challenge. What do you interpret as an order? How often you accidentally say someone's name is like a huge part of the game. And the other
Yeah.
competencies are all like that. They're all things that let you kind of place limits on your role playing in a fun way. And yes,
Can
including their own name be specifies, which can be tough.
can you give us an example of the two clown honks?
No, I don't have a special honk.
Well, there's
Um,
one for empathy, and there's
yes.
one for what was it? For dynamism.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think
One
that
period
answers your
or an
question.
ellipses after
No,
it.
there's like a soft, a thoughtful, a supportive honk. And then
Okay,
there is the honk that is dismissive. It is
but can you do it?
cruel. No.
Everybody
No,
would
but I
love to
can.
hear it.
But I'm painting it with my words. Everyone's imagining
Okay.
a stronger honk than I give.
Okay. That is actually one of the parts of the thing that every time I read it, I laugh. Like literally laugh out loud. Is the
I
honks.
wonder if it's still there. I know we went back and forth about the honks a lot. Another thing, another behind the curtain moment is that like that's the last one in the list, and then we were working on them in basically that order when we were preparing for release of the Delta test before PAX Unplugged in 2022. And so that honestly, you get down to those questions and you're like, what can I what can I add to this? What can we put in here? The vast majority of the questions are Sean, though. I think he did a really, really great job on those.
What do you get asked the most by players that are just discovering the game? Like, what is their major question?
Yes, the big one is how do I do a skill check in this game? That's a big one. You don't is the answer. They're not really there. V knows that that's not an entirely true statement. But there are not skill checks when this game starts, which is to say that unlike other games where you roll to see if you succeed at something, this game assumes your character will always fail unless they are using a supernatural means to achieve their goals. So in a typical situation where you would be like, I roll perception to see if I find it, in this game, you will not find it unless you use one of your abilities or unless you ask the agency to warp reality for you, both of which cost resources. This is because we are playing regular people who then have this wide gap between what their abilities can do and what they can do. And their abilities are very specific and can be used in very particular ways. And for me, that is like not just the joy of this game, but like that's the joy of a superhero. It is like I am a very normal person, but in this very precise situation that my comic keeps giving me, I am able to solve these problems. So that's probably the toughest one, and I understand why. It's the biggest departure, I think, from other games of our scale. So that's a big one. And then, what's another common question? I think, I don't know. That's definitely the one that sticks with me the most. Other questions we get typically tend to be about like making sure that they can use the mechanics correctly. And I don't know. V might think of one, and I'm sure they'll tell me.
What happens if I read a page without a page number? Theoretically,
Demerits for sure. Maybe getting fired. Maybe going straight to the vault. It's up to you at a certain point, but there's no way around it.
Yeah, I didn't do it then.
Okay, that's what I thought.
What's your favorite anomaly to play?
Oh, like of the character pieces?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's kind of a split for me. I think Drain is obviously my favorite, and it's hard to not see that when you look at the game. Even in the final game, I think it's hard not to see that Drain is like the one that I love. I think it's such a fun feeling. The whole concept has so much good texture to it. So I really, really love playing Drain, both because it's a creative, flexible one, and because it's very scary. It's very scary, and it allows you to be a monster in some ways that are not possible in the same ways as some of the others. And then my second is it's probably Manifold. It's not my favorite of the ones I've written, but a lot of Manifold has a lot of my like personal power fantasies in it. Like I love shifting gravity. I love making shortcuts between places. There's a lot of just like straight ahead cool manipulations of space that you can do with Manifold that are just like delicious. So fun to think about, so fun to feel like brain feel. And I so those are my two favorite, but I think Drain is definitely the top. Drain was also the most fun to write, so
Okay, based on the ordinariness rating of various numbers of arms human, what is the third most number of arms humans have?
Is that the one that's hidden? I can't tell
Yes,
you.
the third.
I can't tell you. That's a secret. If you didn't read the page, that means you were reading something else, and that page was in the manual. So if you have to ask me, it kind of sounds like you were reading things you shouldn't be.
What if okay, there's another question in chat, probably from somebody who is about to be demerited. What
All
if I
right.
noticed a page number didn't have a number, wrote a number in the corner, and then read it?
Okay, well, you should not be defacing company property. So, you're gonna have to both pay for that book and then also receive a demerit. Sorry about that.
Red or blue?
I mean the blue for me. That's easy. It's kind of a given joke in the Discord too how much the blue voice is like my text writing voice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it, love it.
Any advice on the mindset for someone thinking of running the Triangle Agency?
Yes. Yeah. The yeah.
Like how to get into the right mindset. What is the right mindset to run it? Because it's not
You mean
like
for
any
a
other
GM?
game. Yeah,
Yeah.
for a general manager.
Yeah. I would say um this game is about friction. Like it's about writing a line where like I think it's a our GMing system makes it very easy to play improvisationally, I think, compared to some other games. It gives
Yeah.
you this cool tool to spend chaos and to play back and forth. But I think if you really want it to be like an awesome session and an awesome game, it takes you having a really clear sense of where you feel, what you feel about the agency and about its enemies and where your campaign is going to like place the line that the players are on. Because the game is almost always going to be about players drifting away from that line, like finding how they feel about what's happening to them and making some strong choices that are going to veer off in one direction or another. But your job is to try to keep them in that friction place for as long as possible. So it's like get ready to juggle, be ready to like give people gifts at the same time as giving them something emotionally difficult and try to be thinking of the game more like a balancing act than like a challenge because the challenge is going to be there on its own. The emotional balancing act is the thing that's really tough.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely most definitely a strongly narrative game with
Yeah.
really unusual action parameters, which I
Hmm.
think is where the balance is the emotionality and it's just so unusual the way that you stripped out so much lethality but added so many consequences regardless. And I think
Hmm.
that's really interesting. Like the the system for I forgot the word for getting rewards is a
The
coin.
commendations?
Right, and it's a coin, of course, because you spend them. It's the currency of the game.
I
You know?
think, yes. I think for me, that's what horror is about. Like, there's a reason that death is ornamental in horror more often than it is a thing experienced.
Yeah.
Um, Death is a thing that's kept separate or used to raise stakes for someone other than the main characters. Because horror needs to be about something else. It needs to be about how you feel and about like the
Yeah.
position that you're in. So I think that having too much death or having death be the primary threat, um, to me, pulls away from the kind of horror we're trying to do.
Is there anything you're so excited about that you have to spoil it before it's released?
Oh gosh. Um, I mean, every single piece of art in the book I have like posted ahead of time when I should have. But all the art that has been shared, there's still lots of secrets, but I would say the stuff I'm most excited about right now is the vault, which I haven't gotten to talk a lot about because we've been working on it alongside 12 total writers. Me and Sean, and then 10 other people are all writing
Mm-hmm.
missions for the book that are coming in the companion book that you can get called The Vault. And those missions are not only are the missions amazing, but each one has a unique illustration by a different artist, creating this amazing palette of energies and stories that I am like dying for people to see. Uh, I'm doing layout on them right now, and I'm obsessed with them all. But the big thing I'm most excited about is for people to see mine, which is, I guess, the best teaser I can give is that it's like me doing something kind of like the Morlocks from the X-Men. It's digging into a story outside of our currently existing parameters, and I think it's going to be a really exciting one to play.
Awesome. Well, we have hit the 1 hour mark, and I want to respect your time and thank you for being here. It has been amazing to get to chat and ask all these questions. I'm super excited about the release. I am running it this year. I just haven't set a date yet. I will start casting soon enough. Probably in April I'll start casting, I think, based on my schedule. But thank you for coming. Is there anything else you want to share before we check out?
Oh, sure. So first of all, I think that sounds great. And April will hopefully be after our digital full version is out, so you'll be able to play with the full game. But what I would recommend is go to preorder.hauntedtable.games. If you don't already have the game, you can pre-order through BackerKit. We're doing a big print run this year, and we are going to be releasing the digital version somewhere between late March and early April, and then we'll be releasing the physical version this summer. We are heading into the production process. We're finishing layout and working to get them moving. So we're going as fast as we can and loving it. I think if you'll keep an eye on my Twitter, on our Kickstarter, and if you pre-order on BackerKit, we'll keep you updated on everything new that's going to happen for the game. My big dream this year, and that you can look forward to if I can make it happen, is we're hoping to have a booth at PAX Unplugged at the end of this year.
Awesome.
So you'll be able to come see me there in like a full year from now, which will be amazing.
That'd be amazing. I'd love to meet you up there at PAX Unplugged.
And I think that's my main thing. I guess if you have children in your life that are between the ages of 7 and 12, I am also a middle grade author of various novels. These three behind me, Top Elf, Buster, and Buster Undercover. But also, I have a Minecraft series starting this year of chapter books called Iron Sword Academy that if you have kids who love Minecraft or know kids who do, you'll be able to check them out.
All the kids I know love Minecraft.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming by. I've dropped in all your the place where people can find you.
Awesome.
I'm Scott of ZealZaddy. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Next week's episode, so different. It's a group discussion, not a one-on-one, which is why does fantasy dominate TTRPGs and can it continue? Hopefully not.
But yes, it can. It can.
It can. Probably. Probably will. Darn it.
Alas,
exactly. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a week.
Thank you all.
Bye.